we're talking about Taliban versus Western values. So, religions, if you really go back to the beginnings of religions, they're sort of the basis of a lot of our governments. Why do we have the laws we have? Why do we have the belief systems that we have and the structures that we have in place? And so religions provide a lot of that for us. But if they're taken too literally or too strict, they can impose some really harsh things that maybe aren't so great for our society. So this one is talking about Taliban versus Western values, and you can see there's a large statue of Buddha there, and then in the next picture, Buddha's gone. Okay, he gone. So Buddhism spread east all the way here into Pakistan, and when the Taliban becomes in charge, they had to do away with all graven images. Now we're on another one of the 5 pillars of Islam. And so they just destroyed this 1,000-year-old statue. They went in, they burned libraries, anything that sort of went against anything they might preach as being, the true way to faith. Okay? All right. Here we're looking at conflict in the Middle East. So 3 major religions all claim this area as their holy land, their holy site. So the Jews, this is where Canaan was. This is where Abraham was. The 12 tribes of Israel and the Torah, they were all written here. Okay, and so the Jews see this as their sacred land, their sacred territory. Well, we talked about the Romans and how the Romans moved in, and about, once they're the diaspora, when the Jews are expelled, the Palestinians move in, okay, and they occupy that land from 7 AD, okay, until 1948, okay. It's a long time for the Palestinians to be there, okay. Now, in about I think it was around the 12th century, the Muslims conquering a lot of area all the way up into here, and they made their way all the way up into Europe, and Christians were afraid that people were going to start to practice Islam instead of Christianity, and so we start to see this fighting between the Muslims and the Christians. Eventually, the Christians create the Crusades, where they go back to try to recapture the Holy Land. Okay? And so this is the place where they say Christ was born here. So it's a holy area. Okay, all of Israel is for those 3 major religions. And here it just shows you the conflict between all of them. So you can imagine how Palestine felt when in 1948 Israel is essentially dropped on them. I talked about how, if I just came and I moved into your house, okay, how would you feel about that? After you've been there from 7 AD to 1948, you wouldn't be so happy with me. And all of this here, things were kind of calm. We had Jews and we had Palestinians sort of living together, and Great Britain. This was all part of this was all owned by Great Britain, and so they had their military there. They were trying to keep the peace. And after World War II, they were tired of the Jews and the Palestinians fighting, and they, London is bombed out. They have to go take care of business back home, and they just basically say, okay, you guys over here, you guys over here. We'll see you later, okay? It's kind of like a car ride to Disneyland, you know how well that works out. So as you go forward, you see that, Israel is essentially surrounded by predominantly Muslim countries, and they are paranoid, okay? They are scared, and rightly so, because they get attacked various times, and little Israel is pretty awesome, pretty steadily, because they win in every single conflict, and they manage to carve out a space for themselves. And now the big conflict is, they've had territory that's essentially they've had agreements. Hey, we're not going to build any more of this. We're not going to take any more of your land, and yet they continue to expand into that land. So, and I don't know if maybe in ethnicity we'll talk about the differences.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So we'll come back. There's later slides about this Arab Palestinian versus Jewish Israel conflict. Okay. All right. So here you can see Jerusalem and how important it is to all the religions. Obviously, we get, the Jewish faith. All right. This is where King Solomon's temple was, the first house of God. Okay. And then you have the Christian quarter. It's big to us. Jesus, walked Israel or Jerusalem. My mom says she's still going, but we've never planned the trip. And then Muslims believe this is where Muhammad ascended to heaven. And at that original house of God, the Romans burnt it down in 70 AD. The Romans urinated on the ashes, all right? But when the Muslims came, they built their new Dome of the Rock on top of it. So it's a holy site, not only to Jews, but to Muslims. And this is where Jesus turned over the money changer table. All right, Jesus was there too, okay? And what some of my born-again friends are telling me, I'm just going to tell you, when I was a kid, all the born-again Christians I knew, it's like, the Jews killed Jesus, Jews are bad, Jews control all the money. Now all of a sudden Jews are good, and I'm like, when did you switch on Jews? And it's like, well, this is where Christ is coming back. And I'm like, okay, all right. So, yay Jews, we need to be together. And I know that's a little dicey, but, sometimes this all gets confusing. Like, I was confused, what the heck are the Armenians doing in Jerusalem? In the 4th century, there was a diaspora, people fleeing Armenia. They were Christian converts, and they set up this, monk order, and this became a big part of Jerusalem too. So there's Armenians in Jerusalem, okay? And then here you see a picture of it. Here is that original, the first house of God, the first church, Solomon's Temple, and you can see Jews praying at one of the original walls that is still standing, the western wall. And then here you can see the Dome of the Rock on the ruins, all right? They built their temple, all right? So it's a big deal, okay? All right, sacred to all of the groups. And here, Mr. Hillstrom was talking about the West Bank. What's happening is the green areas were promised to the Arab Palestinians, and what's happening is that the Jewish Israelis need more land, more space, and so they're moving in and building neighborhoods in the West Bank, and the Palestinians are going, what happened to the original agreement? And Israel's saying, the Jews in Israel saying, well, you attacked us, you reneged on the original agreement, and God gave us all of this, originally. So these are the conflicts that are going on, and you can see how both sides feel rather passionately about it. Anything you want to add? Okay. All righty. And then here...
Oh, the green wall.
The green wall?
The green wall.
Oh, go back? Okay, yeah.
That was one of their questions, I think.
All right. Okay, yeah, the green wall, what's happening is, and you guys saw this in World War Z, how the Jewish Israelis are building walls between them and the Palestinians. In World War Z, it was between them and the zombies. But imagine they're building these walls to try to keep them separate, because we had a student once who said, he just laid it all out. He says, look, here's what happens. My dad would have to go to work, as a gardener, all right? And he basically have to go through 4 checkpoints to get to work, and he's got his jacket on. Well, in Israel, every Jewish person has to, unless you're a part of the Orthodox, the tribe of Levi, and you're going to become a rabbi, you've got to be in the army. So imagine you're 18, 19, you're in the army, and here comes this guy who hasn't had his coffee, all right, and he's going to work, and he's got a big coat on, and you've got your automatic weapon, and you're saying, open your coat, all right? Well, about the 4th time this guy goes through it, he loses it because this 18-year-old Jewish kid is yelling at him to open his coat, and he starts yelling at him. Some 12-year-old Palestinian kids see all this, and they start throwing rocks, all right? And then just, it escalates out of control on some Palestinian 22-year-old guy on top of an apartment building, shoots a rocket into Israeli Jewish area, and then the Israeli army comes and levels the apartment building. So, who's to blame here, all right? And obviously we could pick sides, but you can see how things escalate. But imagine going to work every day as a gardener, and you got to pass through 4 checkpoints with some 18-year-old sticking a gun in your ribs, all right? Probably disconcerting. The good news is, at times, all right, our better angels, take over, okay? And we all get together and we find out, hey, we're teaching a lot of the same stuff. Be good to each other, love our fellow man, And here you can see the clergymen getting together because something bad has happened, and they are doing it. Okay, how much time?
All in this together.
Do I have time?
You do. You have 5 minutes.
Oh, well, okay. So while I'm working on all of this, I'm furiously typing away, and I'm a little tired and cranky because Sam kicked my butt in the workout this morning. And my wife and I have an emptying the garbage issue, okay? And we snapped at each other, all right? Ironically, while I'm writing up this brotherly love religion thing, we're all human, we all make mistakes, we all have our petty little things and prejudices, but hopefully what we learn from religion is that we need to be better people and love our fellow man, even our spouses, fighting over garbage, all right? And in the end, we are better people.